Separate the real from the fake. See, we got to get back to love. If we get back to love, then that's when we're going to get back to us.
Seems like it's never enough. And what do you say when you're...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of People Empowerment, where we strive to change the conditions in our community. I'm Nate Boyd, the host, and I can just tell you right now, we have a power-packed half hour for you, and then we have a secondary, more even incredible half hour for you of information. We have a special visitor here today, a very special guest, and he is none other than Bernard Tolbert, and he's running for mayor. He's a Democratic candidate for mayor. Hello, Mr. Tolbert. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's absolutely my pleasure to have you here today. I appreciate the fact that you were willing to come in and talk to us about what's going on in the city. As you know, this is People Empowerment, and so that name really stands for itself. We're here trying to empower the people with knowledge, and the way we do that is to use the media. So I would like for you to just tell us a little bit about it yourself. You don't have to be brief. You can really let us know about yourself, because people say that they like you, but they want to know who you are. We don't really know him. We like him, but we don't really know yet. So this is your opportunity to really share, please.
Well, I'm a Buffalonian through and through. I was born and raised here. Grew up, born actually in South Buffalo, but at a very, very young age, moved to the Willard Park Projects and grew up in the Willard Park Projects. Enjoyed every minute of growing up there. Went to Buffalo Public Schools, School 31. Then not many people know this about me, but when I was in, I believe it was about third or fourth grade, they started the first, I think what they called it, a special progress class. I think now they call them gifted and talented. But they took about, I think, 20 students from all over the city, and they put us into School 6. That's why I was at School 31. They put this class in School 6, and I was in this class of supposedly smart kids. And
how old were you?
I think it was third grade, third or fourth grade. Wow. I was very young. I don't remember. But went to School 6. And then they only went up to sixth grade, so the class then moved to School 76, which is now called Herman Badillo, for seventh and eighth grade. So, early childhood, Buffalo Public Schools. Went to Lafayette High School. I'm a graduate of Lafayette High School. Played sports, participated in. I was track and field, football, basketball, ran cross country. Had a nice high school career, and after high school went to the University of Buffalo. I have a bachelor's degree in social work and a master's in social work.
Wow.
I got that during a very important time. It was in the mid-'60s when there was a lot of going on. The Vietnam War was happening, so there was that whole counterculture movement. And a lot of things were happening on campuses, student demonstrations, protests, and I was a social work student, and so I got caught up in that spirit of social justice, so did a lot of protesting on things that were, some of the inequities that were going on.
You marched?
I absolutely marched, protest, sat in, did all of those kinds of things. It was, those were the times. Attica, I remember the Attica riots, and there was a big to-do on campus, a big rally, and there was a picture of me and my brother Donnie. Me with the dashiki on, and it just happened to get caught in the picture. It wasn't a picture of me. It was in the crowd, and I was right there in the center of the crowd with my dashiki and my afro, protesting some of the stuff that was happening in Attica. After I have a degree in social work. My first job out of graduate school, I was a teacher. I taught at Bennett High School for a year. Not because I had a teaching degree, but I had a lot of experience with children with special needs. I've spent my entire life since 1959. I've been involved in Cradle Beach Camp.
That's what I was going to hit you on. You said it. I was waiting to see if you didn't say it. That's where somebody was talking to me about you. Larry Ross and Steve Ross told me to tell you hello.
I remember Larry and Steve Ross. They were campers. I think Larry was one of my campers when he was maybe 14 years old.
That's what we said, 13 and 14 for many years until their 20s.
And I grew up at Cradle. Every summer I went to Cradle Beach. We went there, myself and two of my brothers, In 1959, when we were on public assistance, the Department of Social Service sent us to Cradle Beach, a camp for people with either children with physical disabilities or emotional, financial, or other kinds of needs. So the Department of Social Service sent myself and two of my brothers, and there began a lifelong affair with Cradle Beach.
So from South Buffalo to the Willard Projects
Willard Park Project.
and the welfare system.
Well, we grew up on public assistance. My mother was, I don't think she likes me to tell this story too often, but it's a story that I feel I'm proud of her. My mother was 23 years old when my dad left her, and he left her with 5 young children. We were 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And she was 23 years old, did not have a high school degree when my father left her. And we were living in the Willard Park Project. She went back to school at nights and got her high school degree at Bennett High School, night school. Then went to Buffalo State, got a teaching degree, and became a teacher and moved up in the ranks. Eventually, she retired. She was a supervisor of elementary education for the Buffalo Public Schools.
Let me stop you for a minute. Listen, that's very impressive because you know what? And that's a story that's happened many times in Buffalo because my mother as well had 7 kids. And in her early 20s, my father walked out. And that's exactly the path she took. She went to night school and then she went to Buff State. And then when she graduated, she became the head of the Buffalo Federation of Housing, back in the early 70s. So again, I can relate to that story. Please continue.
Well, and part of what makes me who I am are the lessons I learned from my mother back then. At the time, I didn't realize it, but I remember her saying that she was never going to have another man do to us, the family, like my father. He was abusive, and I couldn't understand that. But now in my later years, I think about being 23 years old, having 5 kids. I was 23. I had no kids. I mean, I was too busy being a 23-year-old young man, doing things that young men like to do, having a good time in life.
It's amazing.
It's incredible. My mother's able to do that. And when I think things are tough for me, I always think back to what my mother did, and I say, I can do this.
It's amazing too. Again, I hate to keep cutting in, but every time you start talking, you're saying these things, and they remind me of my own childhood because also that's how it was with my mother. Again, the stories are so parallel. So I see like there's a lot of us that went through the same kind of thing. You know what I mean, with the abusive father. My father used to, Lord forgive me, he passed. My father used to beat the living hell out of us and my mother. You know what I mean? I can remember us jumping on my father 7 deep, even my little sister's little babies. I mean, we would stair steps too, you know what I mean?
Right.
And can you imagine, you got this big burly 6 foot, 250 pound man and all these kids on him and he's swinging them to the left and the right. So I absolutely understand that abusive history, and I just wanted to state that fact too because you touch my heart when you say those things because I come from there. But please continue.
Well, so, but I had a, what I considered a very good childhood. I mean, we were a close-knit, very close-knit family. My mother would always tell us that, when you have nothing else, you have each other, and that meant something. And so
yes.
we were, to this day, we're very close as a family. A lot of people don't understand how close my family is because there's nothing I enjoy more than being with my family. I could spend all my time with my kids and my siblings, and I would be a happy man. So that was good. That's why I have this real strong sense of family now because of what my mother ingrained in us when we were young. But so I taught at Bennett High School, Cradle Beach my whole life, but I'm a social worker by education. So after a year at Bennett, they offered me a job the next year, but I felt the children that I was teaching needed a real teacher, someone who had an education background. So I also thought if I was going to be a social worker, I need to get into the field before I get left behind. So I became a social worker, worked at People Incorporated, the West Seneca Developmental Center, and then Child and Family Services. And I worked there for about 5 years, and one day I was at Buffalo State at a career day, talking about careers in social work. I was a presenter, if you will. And there was a gentleman there, an agent from the FBI, who was very aggressive in his attempt to recruit FBI agents. He was at this same career day, and he wouldn't let go of me. He wouldn't leave me alone, and I had no interest in being an agent. But the only way I was going to be able to get this agent to leave me be is to say, okay, send me an application. So he sent me an application. It was 6 pages, I believe, double-sided. A lot of questions about people I didn't know, family I didn't realize I had. And, but then he called me and said, we don't have your application. I didn't send it. I threw it aside. So again, not because I was interested, but to get him off my back, I finally filled out the application. So then, to make a long story short, became an FBI agent and had what I've said all along is the best job in my life, being an FBI agent. And the very best part of being an FBI agent was my last 3 years with the Bureau. I was back home as a special agent in charge, a senior executive with the FBI, running the division in my hometown, which is the Buffalo division includes everything Buffalo and everything east till midway between Syracuse and Rochester. That was the territory covered by the Buffalo division. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great career, but the Bureau has a mandatory retirement age.
Oh, is that what happened?
Well, yeah, at 57 you have to retire. I wasn't 57, but I was here at home as the agent in charge, and I knew they weren't going to let me stay here. They'd already been talking to me about going to a large office like New York, Washington, Boston, Houston. So I knew that at some point I was going to have to leave Buffalo, and I figured, I didn't really want to. I got a call out of the blue from Coca-Cola, offering me a job. They wanted me to come work for them in their security department, and I'd had a great career in the FBI. Didn't want to leave Buffalo as an agent, so I thought, well, this was a good job offer, and so I left the Bureau on my own terms. I retired and I went to work for Coca-Cola, and then back here briefly at HSBC Bank. I was a senior vice president, director of corporate security for HSBC Bank here in Buffalo. Well, actually HSBC USA, which happened to be headquartered in Buffalo, but there was about 400 branches across the U.S. that made up HSBC USA. So I did that for a while, but then got a job offer as head of security for the National Basketball Association.
Heard about that, NBA.
And it was an interesting situation because coming to the bank after working at being an FBI agent and working at Coca-Cola, two jobs where there was always something going on, always something new, a lot of travel, just very dynamic. Working at the HSBC was a great company, nothing at all wrong with the company, but the job was really quite boring for me. And so I was very fortunate that the NBA, I had this opportunity to go to the NBA. And
how long were you there with the NBA?
Over 8 years, between 8 and 9 years.
What, between 8 and 9 years?
Almost, just over 8 years.
So you know all of them, all of the superstars, is that right?
Well, yeah, during those, yes, I did. Every player that came into the league.
Michael Jordan?
I knew Michael Jordan.
What about this, Dr. J?
Dr. J.
Oh, yeah? Pippen, all those guys?
When I came in, I started with the NBA in 2002. There were a lot of players like Dr. J who was retired,
right.
But the NBA always keep, their legends, what they call their legends, they bring them to playoffs and to the finals, and there's a lot of events going on. So I had many opportunities to be in the presence of and talk to Dominique Wilkins, Dr. J. Larry
So what
Bird.
made you leave that lifestyle, that career?
Well, there were a couple of things. One is it's a job that I very much, it's a 24/7 job, and there's nothing wrong with that. Traveled extensively, traveled all over the world. From about July 1st through October, we spend much of that time traveling overseas, running events, doing things. So
sounds like you had enough of it after a while.
After a while, there are many days that I woke up and it took me several seconds to realize where I was, because I was, you travel so much, you're in a different city, and I'm talking about not just here in the United States, but internationally. I wake up and where am I? So it was that. So it was a lot. I think it's fair to say that I had not grown tired of the job, but I wasn't having as much fun in the job as as I was. It's for a young man coming out of college, it's great, but it's a job that wears on you. Like I said, a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week job. Always things going on, and there's a glamorous side to it that people think, oh, you meet, all the players, all the superstars. You get to go to all the All-Star games. You deal with celebrities, not just the NBA celebrities, but the Hollywood celebrities, and because people who come to the NBA games, you have to deal with them.
But it's still a lonely situation.
But you miss home and you miss family. There were times, I didn't see my wife for weeks because of always on the go, always traveling.
So once you actually stopped in all these fields, and you came back to Buffalo, you could have went and lived anywhere in the world. You could be down in Florida right now.
Well, but to me, look, Buffalo. I think I said earlier, Buffalo's always been home.
And I want you to say it again.
When I was working in those other places, in the FBI and working for the NBA, people always refer to me as that crazy guy from Buffalo. Here he comes. All he talks about is Buffalo. There's a story when I was
Buffalo.
I was assigned to our headquarters, FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., the year that the Bills played the Redskins in the Super Bowl. And of course, I'm a big Bills booster. I've been a Bills season ticket holder for 28 years. And as a matter of fact, I had season tickets the first year they opened what was then called Rich Stadium, now it's called the Ralph. So I'm a big Bills fan, and I was, that year they played the Redskins, I was assigned to Washington, D.C., our headquarters, and for the 2 or 3 days of that Super Bowl week, I went to work, rode the Metro, and I had on a pair of Zubaz pants. Of course, I had my regular clothes on, but I had a pair of Zubaz pants, a Bills sweatshirt, and my office was decorated and everything. Bill had a rug, a clock, a helmet, I had Bills memorabilia all over my office. And I came back to Buffalo to watch the game here with friends and family. Of course, I wouldn't dare watch it in D.C. And of course we lost that game. When I got back to work, I believe it was that following Tuesday, they had, in my office, they had put newspapers, sports pages from all over the country, different newspapers. With the Bills losing, they had plastered the wall. They hung black crepe paper from the ceilings. So you walked in with just all this black crepe paper and news articles about the Bills loss. But it's okay. We were there.
You enjoyed it. Yeah, we were there, and there. So
right.
we really did try. I'm going to need a time check from my associate producers as we move. I kind of lost track of time, so I want to make sure I stay on top of it and we move expeditiously. So now you've told us who we are, and now people, you have a glimpse into the life, the childhood, and the history of Bernard Tolbert. Okay.
Call me Bernie.
Thank you very much. Of Bernie, I appreciate that. And it's very obvious that he is a man of the people. It's very obvious that he's been a people's advocate. And the thing with Cradle Beach and taking care of those disabled children, I can't commend you more or say thank you. Did you know Nathan Hodge?
Nate Hodge.
Oh, it might have been after your time. No, it was after your time. But I know people too that worked at Cradle Beach, and they talk about the experiences they got there. Matter of fact, my son worked there last year, my 15-year-old. And you say it's just incredible, to help those disabled kids and to see their looks and their smiles and the enjoyment that they get out of being there, and the counselors being there to be you got a counselor for you, and you got your own private counselor, and it was awesome.
Well, it's interesting because people say that, I've had people say to me, how can you do that? It's depressing. Because some of the kids at Cradle Beach have conditions that they're not going to live to be a child with muscular dystrophy. Typically don't, live through their teens, 18, 19. That's about the end of life for them.
Did some ever pass away that you actually were working with?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There's a young man who came to Cradle Beach. It's an interesting story. He came to Cradle Beach after he had muscular dystrophy. And when you started out as a 9-year-old, you're either still walking, maybe you're confined to a wheelchair, but certainly in later years, you lose your ability, your muscle control, and you are definitely confined to a wheelchair. And there was one young man who came to Cradle Beach, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he came in his last year at Cradle Beach. He had lost so much muscle control that he could not even sit up in a wheelchair. He came on an ambulance, basically a stretcher. We rigged up a gurney, and that's how we transport him around. And he had to. After a couple of days, he fell ill, and we had to take him into the hospital, Children's Hospital. And I can remember the person who drove him in remember telling us that he said on the way to the hospital that he knew he was sick, but he had to get to Cradle Beach one more year. And he passed away. He passed away at the hospital. But there are many stories like that of kids who don't make it, who don't live a long life. But people say to me, "That's depressing. How can you do that?" And it's hard to describe, but those kids, they are not depressing.
That's right.
They live life with such zest, with such joy. And I'll be honest with you, people have said to me, "Oh, that's so great what you do and what you give." And I'll be honest with you, I get a lot more than I give. Over my life, I've gotten a lot more.
So you really learned from those disabled kids?
Well, just learning from and looking at the way in which they approach life, and that's why I said, my struggles have not been difficult when I compare to with some of them. We all complain from time to time about our lot in life, but I've had the good fortune of spending a lot of time around people who have a real legitimate reason to complain, and they don't.
I got to tell you, you wear your passion and your compassion right on your chest plate, right on your shoulder.
I'm a social worker.
And that's very impressive. And again, it's clear. And so that's why it was very important to get you to come on the show so people could really know who you are, because you and I have had some good conversations. And, and I was impressed with, some of the reasons that you want to do what you're about to do with the task that's at hand. And I'm glad that you got into the contest because then it makes the people in power have to address the issues. It makes the people in power have to talk about what they're going to do from the people. It makes the mayor have to talk to the people about what he's going to do. Now, we only got a few minutes left in this segment. We're going to get into the other segment. I would advise people to go to the website, peopleempowerment.apollomediacenter.com. I would advise you to go to the website, and I advise you to watch these shows and get to know Mr. Tolbert. Now, some of the questions we're going to be asking in the second half are questions that have came directly to the website from the people out there, from the public, from you guys. And so we're going to make sure that we ask Mr. Tolbert the hard, pertinent, important questions. So as we start off and finish this little segment with about 6 or 7 minutes left, I'd like for Mr. Tolbert to tell Buffalo why you want to be the next mayor of Buffalo.
Well, it's fairly simple. This is my home. I've had some great experiences and great opportunities. Whatever I've been able to achieve in life, I attribute it to the people I've met in Buffalo and experiences I've had in Buffalo. This city has been great to me. I'm dismayed when I see some of the conditions in our city, and I feel it's incumbent upon me. I have an obligation to do what I can to make my city better, to give back. That's why I want to be mayor. I have no political aspirations. I'm not looking for a career in politics. That doesn't motivate me. What motivates me is to make this city the very best that it can be. I'm very fortunate. I have 3 children, and all of my children live in the city of Buffalo. They came back to, when I was moving around as an FBI agent, getting transferred around the country, when it came time to go to college, they wanted to come back to Buffalo. And it's because of, they're like me, they share a real passion. They grew up at Cradle Beach. My kids, all they knew in the summer times, growing up as children, was Cradle Beach Camp. My oldest son was almost born there. We had to rush from the camp to get to the hospital.
Wow.
So
your wife was there too, the whole family?
Yeah, the whole family.
Wow.
My whole family. We lived.
Wow.
That's all. They spent their summer. They knew nothing. I used to tell them, you don't know how blessed you are. You've got you've got the lake, you've got the ball field, you've got the nature building, you've got the activity building. When kids in the city are having to find ways to entertain themselves during the summer. So when they came back to go to school, they graduated from college, they've all stayed here. I talked to many of my peers, and they tell me that their children have left. They've had to move for opportunities. I want my children to be able to stay here, and I want them to call Buffalo home, and I want them to call Buffalo home proudly, like I do. And if we don't fix things in our city, if we don't make our city better, those opportunities aren't going to be there. We're losing population every day. So that's what motivates me to make it such that my children and your children and my grandchildren can have a good life in Buffalo, can have a life that has vitality, and they can flourish here, and they can call it home, and then their children can do the same thing. I think this city is great, but we're not what we can be, and we're not what we should be, and I just want to do my part to make it better.
So, if you were to become, you like to say when you become mayor, but I'm just going to say that if you are to become mayor, you would make history again. You would be making history as the second black mayor in the history of Buffalo. What does that mean to you, or does it mean anything?
Well, I'm proud of my race, clearly.
All right.
So being the second black mayor. But it's not about. It's less about being, a black mayor than about doing good for my city and my people, certainly. But you're the mayor to everybody. I'm not going to be the mayor to just black folks. I'm going to be everybody's mayor. So I guess what it means to me is that I'll be able to, at the end of my time, to be able to say I did the very best I could for the people in the city that I love and for the people that I serve. That's more important than being maybe a black mayor per se. But I'm proud of everything I do. I've lived my life in a way that I've always tried to do right by people. I've always tried to comport myself in a way that my mother, who is the pillar in my life, and my family will look to me proudly and say, I'm so proud that that's my son, or that's my father, that's my brother. So I've always tried to do that, and those are the things that are important to me. So I want, I've got this love affair for my city. My mother accuses me of being married to the city. She said to me many times, you're married to Buffalo. You do everything. You don't do for yourself. You try to do things about Buffalo, around Buffalo. Well, can't help it.
Yeah, again, passion for your city, passion for your people. When I was down in Florida when Mayor Brown was elected as the first black mayor, and I know, again, race isn't the main thing, but I am black and I am proud of my race. Absolutely. Also, and so I'm not afraid to speak about race, okay, without being racial. But when Mayor Brown became mayor, it was one of the most exciting moments in my life, and I was living in Florida. And part of the reason why I was looking forward to coming back to Buffalo was to be able to be in the city with a black mayor, because I knew the changes were coming on the way for the people in my community, where the disparity, where the poverty, where the crime, where the violence is. And so I really was looking forward to the future. And I've got to say that now at this point, I'm not really happy with what I see going on. I'm not really happy with the racial profiling I see. I'm not really happy with the kids killing kids and nobody doing anything about it or trying to address the issues. I'm tired of seeing our kids failing school and going straight from grade school, a couple years of high school, and then straight to prison. I'm tired of seeing my people living what I call the second slavery inside of prisons, where once they effectively have been pushed out of society and step into the realms of the prison, then they actually become, to me, a slave, because they wind up working for pennies, and they must do what they're told, and they must do what the man tells them to do. And it just reminds me so much of movies I've seen about slavery, of history I've reviewed on slavery. So, I know that those problems need to address, and I don't really feel like they've been addressed correctly in Buffalo. So I would say to you, as I get the clue that we got this last minute left, that I would close out this segment. Of course, we'll be back. The first segment was, get to know you, get to know Mr. Tolbert, get to know who he is and why he wants to be mayor. And the second segment is going to be about getting down to the nitty gritty and the hard questions, so we can find out what he's going to be able to do for his people. So everybody, keep paying attention, keep watching the show, go to the website, check the show out, and as always, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention.